Hello, DC500 here. Today I have for you this Dorma DC500. Now this Dorma is from a company that belongs to a giant corporation called Dorma. Dorma is a competitor of another giant corporation that you might know as Assa. And one of the companies that belong to Assa is Assa. So as you can see, there's Kaba and there's Assa, and then there's this one, the Dorma DC500, and another one that you already know, the Assa 700. They are both very similar and they exist in the Scandinavian market for the same purpose. And we in Locksport are calling this an Assa 700 clone, because in many aspects it is kind of a clone of the Assa 700. It imitates many aspects of the construction, like having a 7-chamber core. It has many of the same common profiles of keys, and also has the same basic pinning inside, with Christmas trees and gins, as I will show after I get this lock. This, although it is a clone and as such an imitation somewhat of the basic aspects of the Assa 700, it is not a basic clone. It is very tricky lock to pick, and it has its own tricks to be able to pick. And although I would say it's a bit easier to pick than the Assa 700, it is still very much harder than most other locks that are out there with a single locking mechanism. So let's get to pick it. So let's try to search for the binding pins. Have to be very careful with this lock because the tapered drivers are very grabby, and we can't use too much force, too much tension, too much force. They can overset, and in fact all the pins are a bit grabby. First step is the same as with the Assa 700. Try to get the false set. We're at that point where probably everything that is not letting us get the full set is just the tapered pins. So to mostly search per tree, 1, 2, 3, and here we go. Got the full set out of this, and check them all. Okay, so 1 is springy, 2 springy, 3 springy, 4 is giving some counter rotation. So just like with the 700, second step, spool part of the trees. Now we search for the next binder. Which looks like number 2. Okay, and number 1. Okay, let's see if we have any spooled part left. No. Yeah, we had a little bit here on 6. So now we have the last part. The first time I picked this, I did not need to float pick somehow, but I haven't been able to pick again, so I'm trying. Let's see. Let's see if I can use something else. I can have a better control over this. It's better used like what I was doing right now. Thinner one, yeah, like this one. Now I have to search for what's the chain that is binding. It's not number 1. Could be number 2. Let me see if it's 4 or 6. Doesn't look like it's 6, and doesn't look like 4, so I think it's 2. And I think it's done. And yeah, let's try. Number 1. One is done. 2 is done. It looks like maybe 4. Oh, something dropped. Four is done. What drops? 1. And we're open. Yeah. So I had to float a little bit. First time I didn't need to. Somehow. Maybe I got lucky. But yeah. Now it's open. You can see I did some scratching here with my heavy tension. The first few times I tried it, I used a pry bar, and then I changed to this. It works much better and doesn't ruin the face of the lock as much. So now I'm going to cut it. One thing I must warn you about before actually gutting: please, please, please use a shim. If you think that Assa 700 is very easy to break because of the drill protection holes, well, this one has a few extra drill protection holes. So yeah. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is the plug. So as I told you, we have various drill protection plugs. These are not really a big problem if you haven't removed these drill protection rods. They do come out. The first time I got one of these, they came out in my hand while I was trying to get, so they can come out like that. See? So if you forget to put them in, you have a brake trap there. And those also come out. Let me see if they are large enough. Yeah, they are large enough for the gin to get inside. And now one difference between the 700, the Assa 700 and this one is that this one has all first 6 chambers milled, and it's a weird kind of milling because it is roundish. It's not exactly very gravy like normally the milling on the 700 is, but it still is kind of effective. So it's more effective than it should be somehow. Maybe that's why it looked like shouldn't be able or shouldn't be needed to float, but it was much easier to do floating. I can put my pick there and it won't grab exactly, but that's not the direction of the pin anyway. So the way that the pin goes is like this. So in this direction it does grab a little bit, not too much, but it does grab a little bit, and that is enough. It might be enough to require a certain amount of floating. Yeah. So yeah, because if you do this, it does hold. The pressure is in that direction, so it is holding it, just not grabbing the same way as a 700 does, but it does hold it. It has just a tiny lip there, just more round. It does have a little lip. Now these are new plugs. I would probably bet that after a few uses, probably a few years or a few dozen picks, these would probably be much easier to pick, maybe. But we're just starting to rank these locks, so we probably don't have enough experience yet to be able to tell. The rest of the pinning is very similar to what we get in an Assa 700. That's why we are calling it a clone, because it's mostly pinned the same way and has similar modifications to the plug, and it works mostly the same way anti-peak wise. So we have these pins that we usually call the Christmas tree pins. Have these pull sections, and we call this last section a chin section because of these that are, wait, now I dropped it, just a moment. Okay, got it. So these, we usually call them gin bottle spools or gin spools because they are similar to old gin bottles. And they traditionally interact with undercuts like we see the Assa 700. In this case, the undercuts are a little bit different, but they still interact a little bit. I would say this is slightly easier than the Assa 700, but it's still a bit tricky. These tapers are very effective and very grabby. I don't know if it's the material they are made of. I don't know if this is stainless steel or something, or what is, or is this kind of modification has anything to do with it. Will the pin grab in that position there, be harder to push up? Might be one reason to have a rounder milling there, and a reason also to have all the chambers milled. Might be something here, because it does seem like it grabs a little bit more like that, goes deeper. Yeah, had to work more to get the full set, and I couldn't use as much tension to get it as with the Assa 700, for example, or with other locks using tapered pins, like old 700s or 500s using tapered pins. Yeah, so there might be a logic behind the shape of this plug modification here, and why they are not using normal milling, normal undercuts like the Assa uses, besides the possibility of infringing any kind of license, maybe, and why they are using it in every chamber except for the last one. Yeah, so here you go. This is the Dorma DC500, and hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.